Who is the toughest player in NHL history? Now, before you run to the comments section, and I love that you go to the comments section, I'm not talking about enforcers. I'm talking about players who endured tough situations. Here are 5 of the toughest SOBs in NHL history. This is defenseman Bob Baun. Back in Game 6 of the 1964 Stanley Cup Finals, Bob Baun broke his ankle in the third period and had to be stretchered off to leave the game. Bob said, "Screw this, I'm coming back." He came back that exact same game in overtime and scored the Stanley Cup game-winning goal. This is Boston Bruins legend Eddie Shore. It's 1926. Eddie Shore is a rookie, but he's already made a name for himself. Billy Coutu gets traded to the Bruins, and during a practice, Coutu goes straight after Eddie Shore. A scuffle ensues, and part of Shore's ear gets ripped off. They thought it had to be amputated, but he found one doctor who was willing to put it back on. Eddie Shore refused the anesthesia and even watched it being sewn back on. I could do a whole video on Eddie Shore, but take a look at this picture. He returned the next day. This is Mark Howe, son of legendary hockey player Gordie Howe. Although Mark is not as well known as his father, he is one of the best American defensemen ever to play. In 1980, in his rookie season, Mark Howe would have an injury that would change the lives of hockey players forever. During a game, he lost his balance and slid into his own net, impaling his leg in the process, forcing the NHL to change their standards and make the net more safe. Despite the injury, Mark Howe would be the second highest scoring American defenseman in all of the 1980s. And despite playing 92 games less, he was only 7 points off the leader. This is defenseman Borje Salming. In 1986, in a game against the Detroit Red Wings, Borje Salming would ultimately get his face stepped on by another player's skate. Despite already being 35 and past his prime, he played later that year and 3 full seasons after that. Known more for his speed and his skill than his toughness, Salming retired the highest scoring Swedish defender of all time, and his point total has only been passed by 2 players since. This is Clint Malarchuk. In 1989, 2 players collided and crashed hard into Malarchuk's crease. It would result in Clint Malarchuk's neck being cut, and he almost lost his life. Trainer Jim Pizzutelli, who was a former U.S. Army combat medic, rushed to the ice, pinched the 2 ends of the severed carotid artery together long enough so that doctors could ultimately save Clint Malarchuk's life. While on the ride to the hospital, Malarchuk was asking if he could go back in the game in the 3rd period. Malarchuk would return 10 days later and play 3 more seasons in the NHL. Who'd I miss? Comment below. Who's the toughest player in NHL history?